What is up, Roll PG Nation? This is Tyler, one of the rollers, and today we are going to go over Deadlands character creation. So we're going to go a little bit of a walkthrough for you guys, especially with the new season we've been running, with Rebecca doing a great job as the Marshal. We're going to go through character creation, how to make your character, how to roll up the stats, how to add all the different little nuances to make your character your character. So without any ado, we're going to dig into it today. And here we go. So I'm going to pull out the rule book and we'll kind of walk through it. So the beginning of your character's creation story, we're going to start with a concept. Now, this concept could be, my character is a rancher that is now becoming a gunslinger, or my character is an old doctor that is tired of seeing people wounded and now he's going out and being a bounty hunter to stop criminals. Whatever you want to play, you can do it. As you can see in the rulebook, there is a number of concepts that they give you as examples. You could be a bounty hunter, a buffalo hunter, a cattle king, a cavalryman in the army. You could be a deserter. There's tons of different options. You're not limited to just these. These aren't classes. These are just ideas of what you can play. So basically, be creative. They'll give you these examples of different aptitudes and traits that your character can start with, but it's a good launching point for a character, basically. So after doing that, once you have your concept, what you want to play, we'll go into the meat of what makes your character, and that's traits. So if you play D&D or other games like Pathfinder, traits are pretty much your attributes, such as strength, dexterity, constitution, things like that. So in Deadlands, you have attributes such as cognition, deafness, knowledge, mind, nimbleness, quickness, spirit, strength, and vigor. So these are your 10 attributes, basically. So whenever your Marshal or your DM says, hey, make a strength check, this is what you're going to be rolling. So how these traits work is they're basically dice pools. So these dice pools can range from D4s all the way to D12s. So D4s is like you're not very good at the skill, while D12 is you're incredible, basically. So to generate these traits for your characters, what you'll do, which I think is a really fun mechanic for the game, is you will grab a 54 card deck and you'll basically flip cards. You'll flip 12 cards, and each card has a value basically assigned to it based on its trait and also the number of the cards. So as you'll see on the screen, which I'm going to show right here, is the trait section right here. So you'll draw those 12 cards and you'll discard the two lowest unless they're twos. Then you have to keep those. So basically, if you have a 2, that trait is a D4. And so on, as you can see. And depending on the card that you draw in its suit is how many dice in that pool. So example, it shows if you draw 9 of spades, that shows that it's a D8 dice in the pool, but the spades allows it to be a dice pool of 4 D8s. So whenever you would make a roll for like strength, maybe, you would roll those 4 D8s and then you'd pick the highest value. So that's how traits work. So after assigning those traits, depending on your character's concept, then you would get into the next section, which is grit. Grit is basically how jaded your character is fighting monsters and seeing supernatural things in the Wild West, or the Weird West as it's called. So basically at the beginning, since your character is just new, he has no experience, that will be a 0, but as you fight monsters, your Marshal will give you more grit points, which will help you with kind of those fear-based checks in the future. After that, you will go into size. Size basically shows how big your character is. Basically, your character, if their normal size, is going to be a 6, which helps when you calculate wounds in the future. So the bigger you are, the less wounds you take. The smaller you are, the more wounds you'll take, basically. So, for example, you get shot by a rifle. You take 12 damage. Now, when you take damage, you divide the damage by the size of your character, and that determines how many wounds you take. So you take 2 wounds out of 5. So you kind of see how that math goes. So you'll start at 6. There are ways to increase your size based on hindrances, which we'll go over later, but generally you'll have a 6. So after creating your size, you will go into pace. Pace is how far your character will move in combat. It's very simple to basically calculate. You'll go onto your sheet. So I'll show you an example of a character sheet here. So how he has the pools values here for his different traits. Underneath these traits, you'll see like under cognition, there's artillery, arts, scrutinize, search. Those are kind of your aptitudes or your skills, which we'll go over after. But basically your pace is determined by your nimbleness attribute. So for example, for this character, his nimbleness is 2d8. So his pace would be 8. So basically the dice value of that skill, of that attribute. After that, we go into being winded. So wind is kind of a temporary kind of, or an alternate hit point system. So you have wind and you have wounds. So wind determines the amount of shock and trauma and fatigue your character can take before giving up in a fight. So this is determined by your vigor and your spirit die types. So for example, for this character, you have a spirit of 6 and you have a vigor of 8. So that means that you would have a 14 in your wind. So you would be able to take 14 points of wind before basically falling unconscious and being able to fight. So that's basically what happens. So in combat, you'll take hits. You might not take wounds, but you'll always become winded by getting shot or punched or stabbed, whatever happens. And you'll basically take wind. And if you drop below 0, your character is out of combat, basically. There are ways to get rid of wind by using what's called fate chips, which we'll go over in a different video. So don't be worried when you drop below 0 or if your character has very little wind. The next section we are going over now is after you've done your traits, your wind, your grit, all of that fun stuff, you're going to go into aptitudes. We'll be going into aptitudes. These are basically your skills. So like in D&D, your stealth skill, your acrobatics, things like that. It's very similar to those. So basically, you'll have a number of points you can use equal to your knowledge dice, your smart die, and your cognition dice. So for example, we have knowledge of a 6, we have smartness of 10, and we have a cognition of 6. So 6 plus 6 is 12, plus smarts, which is 22. You can use these 22 points to upgrade your skills. Like for example, we're seeing underneath deafness, you see shooting of 5d10. So that character used 5 points to be able to upgrade that to 5. So when you're adding aptitudes, a point costs its level value. So to break that down, if you upgrade an aptitude to 1, it'll cost 1 point. If you upgrade an aptitude to 2, it'll cost 2 points, and so on. So 5 level aptitude would cost 5 points. What's important to know is you can't have an aptitude above 5 when starting the game. A cool thing about Deadlands is there are some skills that require that you show a concentration. So for example, the shooting, you can see that he has a concentration of pistols, rifles, and shotguns. Now, since shooting is kind of the same regardless, you use the same skills and muscle memory and things like that to shoot, taking extra concentrations in a skill costs less. So if you have a level 5 skill in shotguns, you only have to spend 3 points basically to bring up your rifles to be the same. So kind of a cool mechanic. I kind of like how skills can overlap. So after you go through, you spend your points on these different skills, that's when we're going to go into the hindrances of what makes your character your character. I really like this system as it makes you take negative traits to be able to get more XP, but also to get more bonuses. So hindrances are these physical or mental handicaps that you take on your character. And the more points you take in hindrances, the more points you can use to buy edges, which we'll go over next, which are benefits or boons to your character. So basically you'd go through the list kind of based off your character's concept. You would pick a hindrance that fits your story, like maybe, you're a wanted criminal, or you have bad luck, things like that. And you'll notice on each of the hindrances is a point value. So as you take more hindrances, you get more points to spend on edges. So we'll go into edges. So basically edges, like we said, are bonuses to your character. It's what your character shines in or what they're good at. So any points that you spend in hindrances can then be turned around and be used to buy edges. So let's say you spent 5 points on hindrances, you can now spend 5 points on edges. Now, it's not necessary to take these hindrances and edges. You don't have to, but there are some bonuses in the fact that as you play your hindrances, your marshal will give you XP or fate chips to kind of push you to grow your character through these kind of handicaps that you're facing. So it is worth it. It adds some fun flavor to your character and makes them more interesting. So I wouldn't skip it. So after adding your edges, the game recommends that you write a background for your character. Now, this can be, a short little paragraph. It could go into a whole page, whatever you feel comfortable, what your marshal wants out of the game. But if you are looking for inspiration, you can go into the core rulebook, and they have a whole section on the lore of the Weird West and kind of the theme of, monsters and the Civil War and alternate history. So if you are wanting to get really into the game, then take a peek at that, read through it, and it'll probably help you find some characters to write up on, basically. So after getting your background, you'll go into getting your gear, which you start off with $250 unless you got more money through your edges, which is possible. And you'll basically only start with that $250 and the clothes on your back. So you'll need to buy guns, you'll need to buy ammo, food, extra clothing, or whatever else you think you need. This game is pretty realistic, so you do keep count of your ammunition and stuff like that, so you will have to do it. Some ammo is more expensive based on the rarity and the type, so you have to keep that in mind also. But that is basically Deadlands character creation in a nutshell. It does have a little blurb on a character. As you can see on the screen right now, they made a mock-up character that shows kind of how everything should be written out, which helps a little bit. But I hope this tutorial kind of goes through everything for you. If you have any questions, you can always comment below on the video. You can reach out to us on any of our social media, and we'd be happy to help you with any kind of character creation or walkthroughs. We're going to be doing more videos of Deadlands, kind of how to make your character like this video, how to play combat, how the fate chips work, things like that, so that you can start your gaming experience as smoothly as possible. If you want to learn how to play Deadlands, I'd always recommend listening to our podcast. We have real life examples of us playing. So if you are curious and want to get into the Weird West, then take a look at that. I'll include a link to all of our information, social medias, and the episodes for Deadlands below. But hope you guys loved it, and keep rolling.